The following is a summary of the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Bereishis, Tov Shin Nun. We're holding now by the end of the month of Tishrei and all its moyadim, its festivals, and at the end of it all we announce V'Yaakov holach l'darkoi, that Yaakov goes on his way, each Jew going into the coming year, Ish tachas gafnoi v'tachas teinosa, each person in their specific place with their individual avodah. And the bridge into this new year is Shabbos Bereishis. And in fact, it contains two opposites. The first is, it's the siyum, it's the end and the sacha koil, the whole summary, the last Shabbos of the month of Tishrei. And Shabbos in general is a time of aliyah, of elevation, and vayechulu, culmination. So really, Shabbos Bereishis signals the entire elevation and integration of everything that has been experienced and achieved in the month of Tishrei and taking it with us into the new year. And hence, the second dimension of Shabbos Bereishis is it's a beginning, in the sense that we start now the avodah of the new year in mundane matters, getting back to our routines. And we know that the Rabbeim of Chabad have said, an aphorism, Azovi meshtelze chavek Shabbos Bereishis, azoy geht a ganz Jahr. However you start on Shabbos Bereishis, that's how the whole year goes. So this bridge, which contains two opposites, has a tremendous effect on the whole year. And that, in fact, lies in the word Bereishis. Bereishis meaning the Rosh, the head of the year, the Reishis, the beginning of the year. And, of course, we read the Parsha of Bereishis, which talks about a new creation. Istakel ba'iraisa u'bar alma, we look into the Torah, and just like Hashem looked into the Torah and created the world, so too we read the Parsha of Bereishis, and from there enter into our new year. Now, these two opposites are, of course, connected with the month of Tishrei, because Tishrei has in it the letters Reishis, and therefore this bridge between the month of Tishrei and the rest of the year takes place on Shabbos Bereishis. What we need to understand is, what is the specific ingredient and what is the power that Shabbos Bereishis has to bridge these two opposites? After all, the month of Tishrei is like a very holy month, full of festivals, full of mitzvahs. The month, in contrast of Mar Cheshvan, doesn't have any festivals. It's very mundane. Tishrei, if you want, is so satiated with festivals, and it leads into something which is very mundane. What is the ingredient that Shabbos Bereishis has that can form the bridge from one into the other? And the answer is, it's the Torah reading. The Torah reading of Bereishis from the beginning of the Sedra, and of course till the end of the Sedra, which finishes off with the words, V'noach motza chen be'enei Hashem, that Noach found favor in the eyes of Hashem. This gives us the koyach to bridge these two worlds. And now we're going to explain how the Torah does that. Bereishis bara Elokim eis hashamayim v'eis haaretz. Rashi brings the statement of Chazal that says that this pasuk calls out for explanation and starts off by saying that Bereishis is a construct of base Reishis, two beginnings, Bishvil HaTorah or Bishvil Yisrael, both of which are called Reishis. And then Rashi goes on to say, and if you want to explain the pasuk simply, then, and Rashi goes on to explain that it's a construct, it's in the beginning of God's creating the heaven and earth, etc., etc. The question here is very simple. Rashi, as he says in many places, only comes to explain the simple meaning of the verse. That being the case, why at all does Rashi here bring a drash that Bereishis is a construct of base Reishis, Bishvil Yisrael, Bishvil HaTorah? Why is it necessary at all to bring that? And even if there is a reason to bring it, he should have brought it after the second explanation that Bereishis goes on the Bria, it goes on the creation. So either leave it out completely or first bring the explanation, the simple explanation that Bereishis goes on the creation and say the translation of the words is in the beginning of God's creating heaven and earth, etc. And then bring the drash or leave it out completely. Why does Rashi bring this drash? The same question we have at the end of the Sedra. It says that V'noach motza chen be'einei Hashem, that Noach found favor in the eyes of Hashem. Now, we know that Noach is only a basar v'dam, he's only a flesh and blood. Hashem is completely aloof from the creation. So why is the pasuk telling us that Noach, a human being of flesh and blood, found favor in the eyes of the Creator, which is so much greater than the universe? So in fact, in this point, we find an interesting connection between the beginning of the Sedra and the end of the Sedra. And that is that just as Rashi says at the beginning, that two things, Yisrael and Torah, which actually preceded the world and are higher than the world, are connected with the world. Similarly, at the end of the Sedra, he says Hashem, who of course is aloof from creation, is and was found favor in the eyes of, that Noach found favor in the eyes of Hashem. What is the explanation over here? Hashem created the world yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. In the words of the Rambam, kol hanimtsoim, everything that's to be found, lo nimtzu elo me'amitis himotzoi, is only found from the truth of his existence. But every intelligent person understands that Hashem himself is in a completely different league than the creation. And in fact, not because he created the world is that his greatest description. In other words, Hashem, we call him the Boirei, we call him the creator, and although creation is magnificent, that's not the full description of what Hashem is, that he creates the world. In fact, Hashem is completely higher and in a completely different league than any description, both a positive description or a negative description. The whole idea of a existence is if you want something which is begidrei haseichel, it's within the power of description, and Hashem is completely above that. The only way we can describe it is actually using the word bara. Bara, as the Mefarshim, the Ramban explains, means beria yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. And as the Baal Shem Tov explains, this is in an ongoing creation in the sense that Hashem pumps divine creative energy into the creation every single second. And were he to withdraw that creative energy, it would cease to exist. And even though, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya Nigeres HaKodesh, that the creation of the physical and the corporeal can only be from the truth of his existence, meaning from Atzmus, nevertheless, Hashem himself is above and beyond any form of description, and although he brings, and he only has the power to bring existence into being, he's still very aloof from from that. And that's not his full description, for he has no description whatsoever. The same applies to any reason for creation. Since Hashem transcends any parameters of intellect, therefore we cannot say that the creation is because of a specific intellectual reason. Rather, as the Midrash in Parshas Nosei says, as brought in Tanya Perek Lamed Vav, that the ultimate reason of creation is because Nisava HaKadosh Baruch Hu Liyislei Yisbarach Tira B'Tachtonim, that Hashem desired to have a dwelling place in this world, and as the Alter Rebbe said, that on a desire one cannot ask any questions. The point being here is that when we're talking about a reason for creation, that concept of reason is only within the parameters of intellect. But Hashem stands far transcendent of that, and therefore the only, if you want, tam, reason that we can give for creation is because of Nisava, because he so desired. Nevertheless, although Hashem is far aloof from creation, he only has the power to create, and therefore in creation itself, it's possible to reflect that essence within creation. And Hashem put the ingredients within creation which were empowered to reflect that essence. And they are Yisrael and Torah, Yidden and Torah. Because it says Yisrael oiraisa v'kutshabrichu kulachad, that Yidden, Torah and Hashem are all one. And they have been given the power to reveal the Achdus Hashem, the oneness of Hashem, within the creation in order to create that dira, that dwelling la'atzmusay for the very essence of Hashem. So, just like we have Hashem who is far transcendent of creation and yet creates, similarly we have the instruments that bring about that revelation, Yisrael and Torah, that they also have two different levels. On one level, they have what's called a Reishis Be'etzem, a level which is intrinsically higher than creation. So by Yidden we say, Ata v'charatonu mikol ha'amim, you have chosen us, and that choice is from the choice of Atzmos, which transcends rhyme or reason. And similarly, Torah, in its Reishis Be'etzem form, in its intrinsically Reishis form, it's Chachmasa Yoritzoni Yisbarach, it is Hashem's will and wisdom. Nevertheless, we have Torah and Yisrael as they enter into the parameters of creation, and there they take on descriptions, descriptive forms of how they are Reishis, even within the creation. So by Yidden, where they're called the Am Chacham V'Novin, a wise and understanding people, they have the qualities of being Baishonim, Rachmanim, Goim Lechasodim. They have elements of shame, mercy, acting kindly. Torah is called Kihi Chachmaschem Ubinaschem Le'inei Ha'amim. It's the wisdom and the understanding of the Jews, which is before the nations. In other words, within the parameters of the world, they have also descriptive terms which explain how they are Reishis, the beginning. And that's why Yidden and Torah bridge this divide and gap, and they have the ability to reveal within the world the Achdos, the oneness of Hashem. So now we'll understand why Rashi at the very beginning of the Torah, even before Rashi explains the pasuk Kipshutai, simply that it's referring to the creation, the very first thing Rashi says is Bereishis Beis Reishis. The Kavanas Habriya, the whole purpose and intent of creation is that Hashem wanted to have a dira lo yisbarach, a dwelling for Hashem here in this world, and consequently had to put into this world the elements that would bring about that revelation, and therefore, Beis Reishis, there are two firsts that he put into the creation, two purposes of creation, which would reveal the ultimate purpose of creation. In other words, he put in Torah and Yisrael because through the avodah of Yidden, through keeping Torah mitzvahs, they reveal the Dira Lo Yisbarach, the dwelling place of Hashem, and in fact, by their avodah, they also reveal their reishis be'etzem, their very essence and source in Hashem himself. And the same is we find by Noach at the end of the Sedra. The reason why Noach found chen in the eyes of Hashem, chen is something which also has no rhyme or reason why a person finds favor in the other person's eyes. Nevertheless, once essentially Noach found chen, it came down in the world also within rhyme and reason. Now, exactly these two dimensions we find also in the month of Tishrei. On the one hand, Tishrei is far transcendent of all the months of the year. And at the same time, it's the beginning of the entire year. And that it all comes to revelation on Shabbos Bereishis, which connects that which is higher than the world together with the world. And that's why it has the capacity to have an effect on the entire year. Because on the one hand, it's connecting something which is far higher than the world, but it's connecting that together with the world. So that's why Tishrei Shabbos Bereishis has the ability to connect Tishrei, which is the avodah of Rosh Hashanah, Tamlichuni Aleichem, accepting Hashem as King, culminating on Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah, when Ata Haresel Adas, when there is a full revelation of godliness on those festivals. So it takes that, if you want, holy and netherworldly and extraordinary experience of Tishrei, and then Bereishis, it takes it and brings it into the months of rain, where we plow and we sow into the mundane. So Shabbos Bereishis is that bridge of how it takes the higher than the world into the world. And that's why it has the power to affect the entire year. And in fact, there is an element of Shabbos Bereishis in every single Shabbos of the year. As it's well known that there's a ray of Shabbos Bereishis, how it permeates every single Shabbos of the year. Because every single Shabbos has these two dimensions. On the one hand, every single Shabbos is the culmination of the previous week. But on the other hand, Shabbos has the power to bless the coming week. So, in general, the difference between Shabbos and the weekdays is Shabbos are the middos, the 6 middos from Chesed through to Yesod, and Shabbos is the sphere of Malchus, which is rooted in Keser, which is the idea of Moichin, that which transcends the world. And they have different avodas. Nevertheless, we look forward to the Shabbos of Mashiach, and in that Shabbos, in that time, the avodah of Moichin itself will be revealed. But today this reflects itself in Tefillah B'tzibur, when a person can take all their soul powers, not just their midas, but also their moichin, and direct them to Hashem. Now, what is the lesson that we can take from all of the above? How do we bridge? How do we use Shabbos Bereishis as that bridge? The answer is that since the world is being created by Hashem, Bishvil HaTorah, Bishvil Yisrael, for Yidden and Torah, to reveal in it the Achdus, the one-of-us Hashem, it's understood that the way we deal with the world is not by breaking the world, but it's by elevating and refining the world. And we do that by following the directives of the Torah within the world. There is a well-known story about the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe had a tobacco box, and it was made of silver. And the Alter Rebbe used the lid of this tobacco box because it was shiny, as a mirror for his tefillin to make sure that the tefillin were straight, positioned straight between the eyes. When there was a discussion about this in front of the Tzemach Tzedek, somebody said that the Alter Rebbe broke the lid of the box off to use as a mirror. The Tzemach Tzedek intervened and said that is incorrect. The Alter Rebbe didn't break off the lid of the box, but rather the lid must have been connected to the box through a thread, and all the Alter Rebbe did was he removed the thread and hence was able to use the lid. Because the derech of the Alter Rebbe was not to break the world, but rather it was to take the world and elevate it. And similarly, although we are not on the level of the Alter Rebbe, similarly the idea is that what we need to do is to take the mundane, take the world around us, our portion in the world, and to use it for holiness and to use it for Torah and mitzvahs. So, Shabbos Bereishis is in fact the best time to make a plan, to make a program of how we're going to unpack these storehouses, unpack the cases of energies and experiences that we've had in the month of Tishrei, and apply them the whole year. And that can be by taking decisions on, in public, by Efabrengen, strengthening our Torah mitzvahs in general, the fixation of our study cycles, certainly learning Chitas, Chumash, Tehillim, and Tanya, giving tzedakah, and there is a tzedakah fund called Keren Hashana, which that gives tzedakah for each day of the year, and in general, all our deeds being for the sake of heaven and knowing Hashem in all our ways, and especially fulfilling the mitzvah of this generation, which is spreading Yiddishkeit and Chassidus and educating people in the ways of Torah and mitzvahs. Because this way we give that person merit that they will be prepared for the Geula. And in fact, there is only one explanation as to why there is a delay in the coming of Mashiach, and that is because it could be that we're waiting for somebody to go out to this Jew in order to educate them in the ways of Torah and mitzvahs. And this is emulating what Hashem will actually do by the Geula, v'atem tzulukta le'echad echad, taking each Yid by the hand and leading them out of Golus. And this avodah of spreading Yiddishkeit pertains to every man, woman, and even child, as is seen that sometimes children, through a hearty word, can have a tremendous effect on somebody. And certainly when we take into account that everybody's actions, we are all interdependent on each other, and even great Jews, and even the Jews of all the previous generations, and even the Shekhinah, the divine presence itself, depends upon our actions now to precipitate the Geula. And consequently, on this Shabbos, everybody should make a cheshbon hanefesh, a soul account, of questioning how many Jews did I bring near to Yiddishkeit in the last few days? What more can I do to bring Mashiach? And when we make these accounts, then we'll go from Shabbos Bereishis into Noach Motzachein, into Noach finding favor in the eyes of the Hashem, and then into Lech Lecha, into the true journey from where we are to the land which I will show you, which refers to the Geula, which refers to the redemption, and then we will have the true chidush, the true novelty of the creation of a new world, a new Torah which we will reveal, and most importantly, the revelation of Yisrael, Oiraisa v'Kudsha Brichu Kol Echad, that Yidden, Torah, and Hashem are all one.